Thank you for downloading from Ravi Zacharias International Ministries. Support for this podcast comes from your generous gifts and donations. You can find out more about Ravi Zacharias and the team at www.rzim.org.
So the rational debunking went into the empirical went into the existential went into the postmodern. Make your own gods. We are a God manufacturing culture now. We make India look tame compared to the gods we've made out here now.
Welcome back to Just Thinking. It's easy to be discouraged by the philosophical and moral climates that we find ourselves in. We are not in easy times. But when you understand why these moods have arrived, it will help you defend the faith you live. The Bible outlines 6 key ideas that set the course for mankind. It should come as no surprise to hear that in changing those ideas, we put ourselves on a fatal path. One of the first changes came in the trend of rationalism. What happened next? Let's find out now as Ravi Zacharias brings us part 3 of his message titled, Defending the Faith We Live.
But rationalism began to hold sway in the academy. Reason, and it became such that mathematical certainty and rational certainty with indubitable precepts was the only thing that people would cling to. But then they found out that you could not have rationalism with an uppercase R dictating everything. There were things like love. There were things like philanthropy. There were things like ethics, which rationalism alone could not ultimately dictate. So they started moving in different directions. We came up with the philosophers who were empiricists. Empiricism started off with the corner on science, that science is an empirical discipline. You put this and you put that and you warm it over in a beaker and they put in the litmus test. If it turns red or green, you have established what is present in the components there. And empiricism became the watchword for truth in the scientific realm. But science gradually encroached upon all of reality, and the empirical sciences want to have a sovereignty over every discipline so that the only one who ultimately has sway on knowledge is the empiricist, moving on from the 17th to the 1800s. So rationalists tried to hold sway. The empiricists came and countered. You've got people trying to find middle ground between the two. And in the 1900s, existentialists were waiting to be born, caught between the tug of war between the cerebral and the empirical or the senses. The existentialists said, wait a minute, what does that make of my will? What does that make of my passions? What does that make of my feelings? I'm like an entity hurled in this universe. I only have a will. I have passion. And so the existentialists came into the scene with willing to express your passions for the now. The existentialists didn't worry about the past. They didn't worry about the future. It was the willing for the moment, for the now. The cerebral side of rationalism took one end of it. The empiricists went to the senses, and the existentialists came and said, you guys are not talking about me. You guys are talking about some professors of philosophy or some lab technicians. You're not talking about me. I'm a feeling, passionate entity, and I have no meaning, and it is meaning that I ultimately am looking for. And so the existentialists started to write on the search for meaning, the search for meaning. You've got the cerebral, you've got the sense-driven, you've got the passion-driven. What was left? Postmodernism. We said none of these boys are right. You make your own universe by changing language. It's not the author that matters. It's the reader who determines what the text actually says. So in the beginning, God said, now in these twilight years of civilization, doesn't matter what God said, you become the God of God. That's basically what Deepak Chopra has done in his book, The Third Jesus, which I didn't buy. I took it from a library. What he says, there was a historical Jesus. We know nothing about him. That's fascinating. And yet his book is punctuated with scores of verses that sustain karma, enlightenment, and yoga. How does he know any of this if we don't know anything about the historical Jesus? So the first Jesus we don't know, historical. Second Jesus, the Jesus of salvation and the uniqueness manufactured by the church. Now comes the third Jesus, which Chopra is going to give to us, who found enlightenment on his path, a la Deepak Chopra style. That's it. So the rational debunking went into the empirical went into the existential went into the postmodern. Make your own gods. We are a God manufacturing culture now. We make India look tame compared to the gods we've made out here now. At least with India, they had the temples for it. Here, we don't even need the temples. We just got bookstores. That's what's happened. And how did it come about? I would give to you 3 or 4 realities that have brought us to this point, and my time is just about coming to an end, so let me race through this. What has happened in our time is this. It is not just the popularization of a secularized consciousness or the atheistic consciousness. It is now a brazenness with which it is held. Don't be shocked by how shocking the atheists will be. That is their game now. Admit it, pronounce it, name it, be done with it. So what? That's the attitude. Yeah, I can do this and this and this. I can do this and this and this. So what? So Sam Harris, who wrote The End of Faith, I responded to him in my book, The End of Reason. Sam Harris was on television and asked about a question, and he said, if I had the choice with a magic wand to eradicate rape or eradicate religion, I would eradicate religion. And if his mother or wife or daughter came home one day raped, I'd like to ask him if he still felt the same way. Or does he wish the man who did that dastardly act had something to warn him and tell him, this is a violation of God's law, stop. But the whole idea of the stridency, read the New Atheists, the brazenness of this. The brazenness of this. I mean the insolence, the rudeness, the intolerance. And that's why some other atheists are rising to counter this. Michael Ruse is one of them. A brilliant philosopher. Michael Ruse says to Christopher Hitchens and Richard Dawkins and Daniel Dennett and Sam Harris, you guys are making me embarrassed to be an atheist. That's exactly what he said. I'm embarrassed to be lumped in with you guys. You've not even done your homework on Christianity. He said that. And people rising that way. So it's the stridency. Number 2, it's the gathering storm of religious pluralism that disorients Western culture. You know, the part of the problem is this. It is not so much the writers, it's the readers. Most Western ideas in response to these other ideas are so uncritical. People don't even understand the basics of logic. We raised a whole generation of young people who lost their authority, lost their love, lost their power to reason. And so when they read this stuff, they're wowed by it. They don't see the contradiction that goes on and on and on. We in our schools have taken away from them the power to reason and the power to ask questions. We must examine worldviews. We must ask the hard questions. You know, it is interesting when we go on to programs, we are asked the questions. As if we're the only ones who have to give answers. They don't have to give answers at all. I've so often tempted in the middle of an interview to say, give me your worldview. Let me ask you a few questions first. And then you find out that most of them are better at smelling rotten eggs than laying good ones. They're better at smelling rotten eggs than laying good ones. Disorientation. Thirdly, the power to inform through the visual. We are learning about ultimate reality through the visual. The visual is a marvelous thing, but the visual is also a dangerous thing. I was in the city of Kodangalur, tongue-twisting name. It's not far from the city of Cochin. If any one of you are from Kerala, you know where that is. The reason it's a historic city is because that is reputed to be the place where the Apostle Thomas actually arrived in India in AD 52, 53, something like that. There's a lot of historical evidence, many historic notations that he actually came there. And I've got books and wards of material that I picked up there to show who all referred to the Apostle Thomas coming there. But through some conversations there, my colleague, myself, and whoever took us there were taken into the inner sanctum. The inner sanctum is an altar where it's a huge crank wheel like this that's locked up like a safe, and a certain code and the key is needed to unlock it. Then it closes and you step onto a platform. As soon as you step onto a platform, loud music blares all over the place. That means somebody is approaching the relic. And you walk up to, there's a glass in the relic, and there's about a 2-knuckle-sized piece of bone inside a glass. And the people who take you there touch the glass, kiss, put it on their heart, bow down, and show that to you. That, they tell you, is a piece of the radial bone from the forearm of the Apostle Thomas. I said, how did you get it? She said, after his body was taken back to Rome, in more recent times, the Pope sent a piece of that bone, and now it's here under glass for us to look and see and revere and so on. I wonder if Thomas regrets having ever said, unless I look and touch and feel myself, I myself will not believe. You know the visual? When the very gospel that tells the story of Thomas tells us these things are written. These things are written that you might know that you have eternal life. Propositional truth far more enduring than visual. And so the whole pout informed through the visual. And let me just say two more here. The lost center for cultural molding. There's no center left to mold culture. It moved from institutions to institutions to institutions. No one place molds all of culture now. Maybe if any place does, it's the entertainment media, which legitimizes things and homogenizes tastes so that we can all sit down and talk about the same show and the same idol the next day. That's the way it goes. And the last one is the shifting power to a younger world. We must come to terms with this. The world of entertainment and the world of sports principally, once it latches onto the young minds, there's a big industry in it, there's big bucks and there's big money in it. Young guys coming out at the age of 21 and 22 can be signing $10 million contracts. The buying power, the emergent power, the idolatrous power, all of that comes along with it. And so it's the shifting power to a younger world.
If you would like to purchase a copy of today's message from Ravi Zacharias, call us at 1-800-448-6766 and request the title, Defending the Faith We Live. Or you can order online at rzim.org. If you're listening in Canada, that website is rzim.ca.
This week, Ravi has been talking about defending your faith. And if you've ever been asked questions about Christianity that you aren't sure how to answer, be sure to check out RZIM Academy. This online training program provides recorded lectures from Ravi and other RZIM team members and is designed to provide a broad introduction to apologetics, address common objections, and provide practical skills of engaging in fruitful dialogue with people of different worldviews. To learn more, go to rzimacademy.org. To find out more about the ministry of RZIM or how you can partner with us, call us at 1-800-448-6766. Or you can visit us online at rzim.org or rzim.ca for those in Canada. Your prayers and financial support allow us to encourage and equip Christians and to share the gospel with gentleness and respect. Just Thinking is a listener-supported radio ministry and is furnished by Ravi Zacharias International Ministries, Atlanta, Georgia.